Welcome to the Data Playbook podcast. It's a podcast for data leaders where we aim to build a playbook to get more value from data. We do that through a series of interviews with other data leaders, data practitioners, and data experts. I am Kris Peters. I'm the CEO of Data Minded. And as a guest with me today, I have Frederik. Welcome.
Hey, hello. Thank you.
Thanks for joining the podcast. Before we dive into the topic, can you quickly introduce yourself? What are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, so I am Frederik and I studied engineering here in Leuven. After my engineering, I loved physics and I started to do a PhD in physics at IMEC, but it was very theoretical. So then I realized, okay, I need to do something more practical. I loved programming, data, simulations. So therefore I joined Data Minded. And since then, I have done technical jobs, building data pipelines, building on data platforms. And now I'm more in strategic roles.
All right, cool. So the topic of today is you developed a framework so that you built the right data solutions, especially for large-scale data initiatives. But why do we need such a framework? Why can't we just start building data solutions?
Yes. What we often see is that big data initiatives actually fail. There was a recent study that pointed out that about 95% of the big data initiatives fail and don't deliver the expected value. So what we developed here is a framework to really focus on that first stage, to identify the real problem that you want to solve and to ensure that the problem space is big enough that you deliver real value by solving it.
Yeah.
And it's really to enable quick iteration and ensure that you apply a solution or find a solution based on a scientific-based method, on rationale instead of just emotions. Yeah. And then once you've done this approach, then you can start planning and really going for the implementation of a solution.
All right. You mentioned the scientific method there. That's a big word, right? It sounds impressive. Can you decompose that for us? What does it mean? The scientific method applied to building data use cases or data initiatives. Yes. What does that look like?
Yeah, so the scientific method, we also apply it or I did at least in my PhD. So you need to do research and there are a lot of unknowns and you try to point out and list what are all the assumptions that I have, what are the highest risks, and then prioritize them, find the most important one, and start tackling that one first.
Yeah.
And that you do by simulation, for example, or another experiment to make sure that that assumption or risk is correct, and then you go on to the next one. Mm-hmm. And you can follow a similar approach with data products because you also have a lot of risks, a lot of assumptions that you think that might be right, but unless you have actually verified it, it's still an assumption. And that's the scientific method to me, really listing the assumptions, the risks, prioritizing them, and then validating them with an experiment.
All right, cool. So let's dive in. Your process or your framework, it contains several steps. Where do we typically start? Because as an engineer, you typically start from deciding on which data platform to build the use case on, or deciding on which large language model to use to implement the use case, or you look into technology or algorithms. According to you, where should we start?
Yeah, I think the first starting point, that's also what you read most often in the articles, and I think they are all right, is starting from the business strategy. So you have a company, and every company should have a company strategy, and you should make sure that you really understand the strategy. Everything start from there. Everything you do should contribute to that strategy, help your company achieve the goal. So that's the first step. And then in the second step, you have to start with the problem or the customer. So try to find a clear customer or problem and really have it very specific. So what you want to do is you want to have a quick win. You want to show something. You want to prove the success. And therefore, you need to start small. You can start with the problem or the customer. Here, we start with the customer, and then you can link that to the business strategy. Okay. So, for example, if your business strategy, if your company is building a product, and if the strategy of the company is to sell the product to more people, so to grow the user base, then, for example, the marketing team might be a very relevant team that can contribute with a high leverage to the business strategy. So,
why is that?
because the marketing team can reach out with a lot of marketing to new customer segments. So the marketing team needs to understand the behavior of the people that use the product, and also the behavior or the interest of the people that don't use the product, because you need to change your marketing a little bit if you want to sell your product or to reach out to other segments in the market. So therefore, you need to have a lot of understanding about what's the behavior of the product. Therefore, marketing team might be interesting. But if you have another business strategy, it can be another team that might be interesting. So that's something that you need to think about. So
if your business strategy, for instance, is cost cutting, we need to just be more efficient with what we have, then your first customer might be the operations department.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
All right. But then you have a large domain of potential people you want to talk to, and let's take this example of the strategy of the company. It's a product company, and they want to drive more usage of their product, and so we start looking at the marketing department as a customer.
Yes, and then you want to have a very specific niche, a small group of people that also want to innovate, that are open for technology or for changes, because a solution actually doesn't always have to be technology, so that are at least open to change. You need to be able to communicate with them, have a good relationship, and if you find such a team, a small team that is open for innovation, then you can say, okay, yes, you are my target customer for the early stage of this big initiative.
And is the opposite also true? So if you, within marketing, don't find a team that's willing to collaborate with you, then you say, it doesn't matter what kind of technology we're going to build, they're not going to adopt it, and let's find another customer?
Yes, then I would recommend to look for another team, because it's really about collaboration. Yeah. If you these days want to innovate and bring a lot of change, different teams will have to collaborate with each other, especially if you're the head of data, you want to enable other teams with data. I think collaboration is very important, and you will need the business insight, the insights from the other teams, because we will come later to that one. You need to understand the problem really well. And you have the people inside the data team, but they don't understand the problems of the other teams. So you need collaboration. You need people with knowledge about the problems.
Okay, all right. So does that bring us to the next part? Yes. About finding the problem? Yes. What is that about?
Yes, so that's all about finding the problem and not directly jumping in a solution. So that's an important takeaway. You first need the team that you want to help, and that can contribute to the business goal, the strategy. And then for that team, you need to figure out what is the biggest problem they have. How can we accelerate them before starting in the solution? And that you can do in different ways. So you can do interviews, you can do surveys, you can also look into metrics if they have metrics. I would recommend to do at least several interviews, because they give the most insight. And then you need to pay a lot of attention in doing these interviews, because it's very important to ask the right questions. You should always think from the perspective of the problem and not the solution. So really focus on the real problem of the customer. They have a goal, they want to achieve a goal, and what's their problem? So that's something you can ask, what's the biggest problem that you're having now? And then they probably say a lot of different things, and then it's your job to figure out what is the biggest problem, or the set of biggest problems. And this you can do by asking follow-up questions like, when was the last time you experienced that problem? Or did you already try to find a workaround, or did you spend time on finding a solution for the problem? And if they say, no, we didn't, or it was already 6 months ago, then you actually know it's not a big problem. It's more like a frustration. And here in this exercise, so this exercise is an upfront investigation. So with such an exercise, you want to tackle big problems. So if they answer it's too long ago, or they can't remember, didn't investigate for a solution, then it's probably not a big problem, and you should search for another problem.
Can you give an example of such a problem that's big enough to really be addressed immediately, versus a problem that is annoying to them, but they haven't solved it themselves, or they haven't tried to solve it.
Yes. For example, in the case here, if we consider a marketing team, they are non-technical people, so they might find it challenging to find the right data and analyze the right data. So that can be a real problem, is if you have some analysts in these teams that need to get insight from the data and then put it in their marketing platform, for example, and they can find the data, and that's a real problem. A smaller frustration can be, I need to wait every day 30 seconds or 1 minute to launch a portal or a query. Yes. Is also important to solve and to tackle, but for a big initiative, that's probably not where you want to.
But you are looking, ideally, they've already tried to solve the problem. So you want to see some traces of, well, it's very hard to get to the actual data, so we ask someone in IT to make an Excel export for us and put it on SharePoint, and then...
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. That's typically what happens. For example, what I already encountered in practice was that they reached out to the more technical people and asked them to write a script. And then the technical people, that is also very busy, had to spend some time on writing a script, and it just delivered the script to the non-technical team, and the non-technical team is just clicking on execute.
No clue what they're doing.
No clue what they're doing, and then there is a change, and it fails again, the script. They need to reach out again. So, and that's already actually a very good sign, because they actually had a real problem. They were figuring out, reaching out in their network, is there somebody that wants to help me? They stole time of that person to do a hacky workaround solution. That, okay, I'm sitting on something.
They went through the hassle of actually involving someone else to write a script for them. They learned how to just trigger that script and stuff. And if you that's a necessary condition for you to qualify as a big enough problem.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's how you do problem discovery. But there are also pitfalls in there, or do's and don'ts. How shouldn't you do problem discovery?
Yeah, so I think what you should not do is asking the wrong questions, and that's like trying to propose a solution. Like if you're talking to a customer and you're asking, what's your biggest problem? And then they say A, and then you say, but B might also be very annoying to you. And then they probably will say, yes, that's also annoying, but they didn't came up with that in the first place, so probably it's not B, but the biggest problem is A. And that's just the way of thinking. You should not think from your perspective, but really try to think from their perspective. And that's another quote. The customer owns the problem and you own the solution.
Yeah.
So really listen to them. They understand the problem. You don't have to try to point them to a problem or try to explain, but is this also not annoying? And there I think something can go wrong if you start sidetracked, if you got sidetracked in the wrong direction and you start focusing on the wrong problems.
But then let's take with this example for simplicity, right? Let's say we interview a marketing person, and they say, well, I used to have this problem of not getting to the right data, but then this engineer wrote a script for me. Since then, I've happily applied the script. I run it every week. I get my data. Sometimes it needs to change, but I contact the guy. 2 days later, my script is fixed. Actually, for me, this is not a problem. Then isn't it your job to raise awareness about, look, but that script is actually completely not governed and the data you get is not secure, and I'm a bit worried that data lives in Excel, and you should better directly contact the data warehouse, and there are other ways and you're just not aware of the other ways. Isn't that your job then to educate the customer or the marketing person? You say, no, it's you only identify the problems that they come up with.
No, you're absolutely right. You should, if you have understanding of the data platform, you should also educate them. That's just one way, the workaround. Typically it works until it fails, and it's typically not governed, and compliance is not okay with it, and so on. But it typically works. So if you want a proper solution, then that's not the right one. So you should educate them.
Yeah.
But there are also other ways that you can identify that they spend time in it. For example, another way could be that they told, if they say to me, previous week I was looking for like several hours into a solution that's just available that we can buy for the company. So we have now this solution, and yesterday we had a brainstorm with the whole team to compare the different options. Then so with the whole team, they are investigating existing solutions that solve their problem. So that's another kind of workaround. So the workaround that I mentioned first is really like writing a dirty script. Another workaround or a sign that they spend time in it is find another solution.
And is that a good thing to you or a bad thing?
That's a good thing. But then, yes.
Because you could say, well, but they're doing shadow IT. They want to buy another tool which might not be integrated in our tooling landscape.
Yes. So, okay. So it's not a good thing that they want to introduce something new, but it's a good thing because you know that's a real problem. That's from that perspective. If you're looking for a real problem, that's a good sign. It's a real problem.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not... we made that comparison earlier. Like you should look for like real pains and not just like selling them vitamins or something, because you want a painkiller that can actually take away a physical pain that's bothering them so much that they can't do anything else. They need to get rid of the pain. And looking for the solutions even outside of the market, or like non-compliant solutions, whatever. At least they're looking for a solution so the pain is big enough, right?
Yes, exactly. And then also, how do you define a good problem then? There are three very important aspects in my opinion. First one, it should occur frequently. And so therefore you ask the question, when was the last time that it occurred? Yeah. Secondly, you also want to have it quantifiable. If you can measure it, it's always a very good sign. Yeah. It's also very good for your stakeholders. You can measure it, you can quantify the problem. And then the third one is urgency. If it's an urgent problem, they have more tendency to take action.
So if they need that data once a quarter to put in their business review,
yeah, it's less important than something they need to do every day.
Yeah, that they like we need the data, or else we cannot target new users to drive more adoption of the platform or whatever the tool is selling. Then okay, all right. Does that conclude the problem space? Or?
Yes, I think so. So then we first started with the understanding the business strategy. We identified our customer, small segment of the whole company.
Can I ask you about that?
Yes.
You mentioned it a few times, small segment. Why can't I find a large segment? So if I see like all employees of this company are annoyed by whatever, the check-in system sucks. Right?
Yes. So that's a very good question, and that's both valid for the problem space as well as the customer space. You want to start small, because if you directly want to help everybody with all the problems, then you will have to add a lot of features, a lot of different things. People will give different feedback. Different teams might give different feedback. It might conflict with each other, and you will end up with a lot of misery. So therefore, if you want to gain a quick win, which is very important in big projects, to gain momentum, then it's very important to ensure that you're going to win and be successful. And therefore, have a very clear target customer, small niche group of people, and clearly define the problem that you're going to solve, and then just 200% go for it and solve it for them, and they will be happy. And then you can start expanding.
Okay, all right. And then, I'm sorry I interrupted you, you go to the next phase.
Yeah, the next phase is determine the available options.
All right.
So the target customer, it has a goal and it needs to reach the goal.
Yeah.
And it experiences a problem that we identified in the previous phase. And it always reaches a problem. Today, they also reach the problems. It's just challenging for them. But they have some available options to reach the goal. For example, here in the case of the marketing team, they need to find data, analyze data. But it's challenging for them because they have Colibra, which is, for example, which is a data management tool, but only the metadata is available there. So they don't have access to the real data. Yeah. They might download the data and then have it in Excel files, which is nice, but then it's difficult to integrate data with each other or to gain insight from different data sets. Yeah. The data platform also provides a notebook, for example, but the marketing team doesn't have technical skills. So if they combine everything, so they will reach the goal, but it's with a lot of challenges and problems. And that's very important to identify. So really understand the problem and then understand the process of the customer. What goal does it tries to achieve? What are the steps that the customer goes to? And for every step, what is a tool that is used? Is there a dependency? Is there a specific challenge? Yeah. And that's what we call the journey map. And then create a complete journey map for the whole process. And then you directly see all the available options today for the customer.
Yeah. Okay. But I think it's good that it might sound obvious, but that sometimes we in data and IT, we assume that a customer can't solve a problem without our fancy data platform, and they're waiting for us to launch a platform and then they can start doing their jobs. But 99% of cases, that's not true.
Yes,
99% of cases, they're already doing their job with or without you. And you are looking like from a data department, like, okay, can I help you accelerate? Can I make you do your job faster or better or higher quality? But you're already doing your job, and the journey map will visualize.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's a very important point that you mentioned, because everything that the customer always has an option. And indeed, like you said, oh, there is no data platform, so they can't do it. That's not true. They always can do so, almost always can do the job, but it's just not always in the right way. And that's the competition that you have. So if you're building a data platform, the current way how the customer works, that's your competition. You have to ensure that your data platform and the tools and the features that you provide are better in some way than what they are doing today. So that's something important to imagine, because typically or sometimes technical people assume then they have nothing. So everything that I contribute is better for them, but that's not true. You have competition. You always have competition.
It's even worse that a lot of data platforms assume like they can roll it out with authority, as in we are just going to force everyone to use the platform. This will be the only way for them to get access to data, and we're going to force our users to use it. But that's even if they technically can do it, which is very difficult, but even if they technically can force users on the platform, it's a very bad mindset, right? Because it eliminates all the incentive you have to create a good user experience or to actually solve the problems that the user has. Mm-hmm. There's this great quote from Gregor Hope. He's one of the guys who wrote, or he's the guy that wrote Platform Strategies. And it's a book, and he mentions there a great quote that says, you should always design the platform to be optional because it is in practice, right? Okay, but we're already, maybe I'm jumping a bit too far ahead, because the data platform might be a solution, but we're not even looking at solutions yet, right? We're looking into available options, doing a journey map.
I think what we mentioned is actually a very nice jump to the following, the next point, which is identifying the value gaps. Yeah. Because we said the available options you can see as a competition for what you try to build. Yeah. And here in the next phase, we are going to identify, okay, what's important for the customer that's not available in the available, or that's not present in the available options. Yep. That's what we need to find, because then we have something complementary that will bring real value to the customer. Okay. And how do we do this in this phase is going over the several dimensions. There are classic dimensions, like, for example, pricing is one, simplicity, automation, integration, smart is a tool smart. So you have a lot of dimensions. You can come up with new dimensions and then try to think which of them is actually important to my target customer. Yeah. For example, here in our case, we have the marketing team, and you sit together then in a brainstorm session, think about dimensions. You can start from the classic ones and then think out of the box, new ones that are specific to your company, for example, and then try to score the dimensions on what you think, how important the dimensions are for the customer. Okay. And for example, if you do that in our situation, in our example, we have the marketing team. The two most important dimensions can, for example, be simplicity. You want a simple solution, and also integration, because they want to have data, so they want to plug in data in their marketing tool. So integration with these marketing tools might also be very helpful. So now you identified two dimensions that are not available. So that's also something that you should check, that these dimensions, that the other available options score very low on these dimensions. And then you're quite sure that you will win against the available options. Yeah. Because it's important for the customer, and the available options don't have these two dimensions. So in this example, the script that the engineer wrote for them, it is quite simple because they just have to press the button. Well, if things go wrong, it's not simple anymore. But as long as I press the button, it is simple, but it's not integrated, right? It's just a dump to Excel. Yes. Right? Yes, and then you can also make a 2D matrix, and your option has to be the only one in the right top corner.
Yeah.
So if you plot the available options, they should always should no option be in the right top corner.
Yeah.
There should no option be that's very good at both dimensions. Yeah. It's fine if they are good at one, but if they are good at both, then you should search another dimension.
Yeah, because if you think those are the top 2 dimensions and they already have an option that scores high on both them, then actually happy days, right? They have a solution.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
No need to build another solution.
Yes.
But then it also means that even before building it rules out certain solutions, right? So it would rule out, I was just going to make a Jupyter notebook available and then they can do all the data discovery they want, because that for them would not make it very easy to use or simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And also a final thing that I want to say about this is that it also enables you to focus. Again, like I said in the beginning, you want to have a win. Following this approach and ensure that you're following on these dimensions that you know are important for the customer. You know it's an important problem. And if you focus on these 2 dimensions during the solution phase, which is the next one, then you're quite likely to win.
And maybe the challenge is, I guess when you talk to business stakeholders about this, is to limit to only 2 dimensions, because they will always, but simplicity is important, and integration is important, but cost is also important, and scalability is also important, and it also has to be AI ready, because AI is right. So how do you do that prioritization of the dimensions which are truly important?
That's a very good exercise, and that's one with all the stakeholders in the room. So how we typically do that is by having the people together, brainstorming what are the important dimensions, and then voting, a classical voting.
Yeah.
You can also do some reasoning, go again, talk to the people, do a survey to figure out what's most important.
All right. So it means this is not an exercise you can do alone. Yeah. On a whiteboard or something by yourself, or you need to involve all the stakeholders.
Yes, indeed. So with this complete process, that's really, you need to assemble a team, a multidisciplinary team. You need people with technical skill. You need people with a network. You need people with more the business side of things, knowledge about the business side.
Yeah.
Bring them together. They need to make time for it. There will be several workshops that are really physically together with post-its, and then voting on the right solution. That's really important to have the people together working together. Yes.
All right. Cool. And what's next then?
So in the next phase, we go to the solution, and that's a more classical approach in the solution. You brainstorm for solutions. You think out of the box. You can have a lot of solutions. It doesn't always have to be technical. It can also changing a process, changing the team structure, operational items. But it can also be a tool. It can also be AI. So a lot of different solutions, have them all together during a brainstorm session. In the following step, you're going to consolidate everything. Maybe you can directly throw things away. You can see these 2 things are similar, group them together, and then try to already think about which do make sense. And then you will end up with, or you should end up with, like 5 or 6 solutions that you think, okay, as these solutions might make sense, might solve the big problem of our target customer. And then in the next phase, you want to do a prioritization of these solutions based on rationale, so not on emotion. And that's very important that I want to stress, because it happens often that technical people have a technical preference, or non-technical people have also a certain preference about a process or a way of working. And you should ensure that you follow a structured approach to look at the solution and the problem from different perspectives, so that you don't end up in a tunnel vision or make an emotional decision. And that's here in this workshop. We have the different lenses. So it are 5 different lenses that you use to look at the solution and problem from a different perspective. So the 5 different lenses are kind of orthogonal to each other. So I just go over them. So you have the customer lens, that's looking from the perspective of the customer. Does it solve their problem? How does it solve it? Then you have the growth lens. Is the solution scalable? Can we grow in the future? You have the money lens. Will it give a return on investment? You have the pragmatic lens. How much time and effort does it take to implement? And then you have the differentiator lens, which is based on the two dimensions, the value gaps that we identified, the two dimensions that are important to the user and that are not present in the available options. And then based on these lenses, so there is a scorecard system behind it. You can look to the different lenses, and then out of that exercise, you have a prioritization of solutions on a more structured and based on rationale instead of emotion.
And do you just do a scoring on those 5 dimensions and you say, okay, the number 1 solution is A, and then we roll it out, or how does that work?
Yes, so then we go to the next phase. And that's then the scientific method. We should first identify, so we are not yet building. So that's also a very important takeaway, actually. We identified the most important solution by looking to the different lenses. And then it's not yet good to start implementing, but first identify the main assumptions.
What are we missing? Because we've gone through this whole process of, does the line with strategy, does it have a customer, is there a problem, do they have options, are there value gaps? So I feel like I've ticked all the boxes. Why can't I start building yet?
Because you have a lot of assumptions and risks that you didn't verify yet. So you have a lot of reasoning. So everybody has a lot of reasoning based on assumptions. It's also in science. If you do scientific work, you start from assumptions and you build on top of that. So with mathematics, so there is a fundamental assumption, axiomas, and people build on top of that. You also have to think, if you propose a solution, you definitely also used some assumptions, and it's important to verify them.
And so take this example of the marketing team again. They want access to data to analyze it in order to grow the user base, because the strategic mission, blah, blah, blah. We need something that's simple and integrated. So we found an off-the-shelf marketing automation solution that does some automatic calculation of KPIs, whatever. It costs, I don't know, 20,000 euro a year. And it costs 100K to integrate, whatever. I'm just making numbers up. What are some of the potential assumptions we're making here?
Yeah, so here, this is a very nice example of selling something like plug and play. It sounds really nice, but is it actually nice for the user? So that's what pops up first for me is desirability. Is it really solving the user need? Because it's nice, it's plug and play, and it's easy, low code even, for example. Drag and drop. But then you need to verify that's an assumption that you make, right? That's an assumption.
Well, I've seen it in the demos, I've seen it in the slides.
So then you need to set up so you need to go through the phases to first determine the risk assumption. Let's imagine this is now the most important assumption that we collectively as the team identified. Then the next step is to define a hypothesis, like the users, they will love the plug and play drop-in tool, and then you need to link some measurable goals to it that you can really, the hypothesis should be falsifiable, that you can really say it's true or it's false. Upfront, you need to have a target value to verify, and then you can set up a demo. So don't start building the whole product. Set up something really, really small with some demo data, for example, and then give it to several users, track them what they do and see how they react, and then ensure that you do validate the assumption. Was your assumption correct? Do they actually use it? Do they love it or not? And if not, you need to go back because
to the drawing board.
Yes, to the different solutions. And so that's the scientific approach. It's not because we said that solution was the best one to us. That's an hypothesis. It's an hypothesis that solution is the best one. Then you need to verify it. Go through the assumptions that you made for that solution. Test it. It can be a desirability test, like setting up a small demo, but it can also be a financial test. Maybe how much does it actually really cost? Then you see something on the website, but do a more comprehensive analysis, or maybe set something technical up and really measure the cost. And is it correct? Or another dimension could be feasibility. Is it technically feasible? And then you can also experiment. And these risks you should validate, check. And if the top risks or assumptions are validated and correct, then you see, okay, yes, this solution makes sense. We checked the most important things. And then you can go to the next phase. Then this workshop is over. Then you are quite likely that you will have a win and solve the real problem of our marketing team.
But before going there, let's take this hypothetical example, right? And so you're right, there was some assumptions we made. So we test desirability, like the drag and drop. That's something you can easily validate in let's say, in a controlled environment. But what do you do if actually to test it, you would have to roll it out? Here, for instance, what they found was very important is integration with existing systems. Well, the solution can definitely claim we integrate with Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever marketing tool you have. But actually, you only know it when you've integrated it, right? So are there ways of faking it or discovering if, like, how would we approach testing that?
Yeah, so there now the vibe coding tools are very handy there because you can very quickly set something up. And indeed, yeah, if your highest risk or one of your highest risk is in the integration part, then you should test it and do it. That's the minimum viable product. What they also say is make it viable, that it makes sense to test with it, but make it also minimal. Don't spend too much time in it. Don't over-engineer. Make it really minimal. Do some dirty tricks behind the scene or do fake things, but that it looks for the customer, that it's real.
I love it because where engineers often fall into the trap of they're going to over-architect a very complex solution with message queues and cloud setups and whatnot to integrate two systems, which is the perfect way to integrate system A and B is through that architecture. And that might be true. But that might not be the biggest risk, right? Like you believe, like, okay, once we know this solution is right, we believe that we're going to come up with an architecture that integrates the two. But for now, just to test a basic rudimentary thing, you can just vibe code something that you say, okay, a month from now we'll throw it away. But now we're going to do something very quick and dirty, and it's going to be very ugly. But it's just to test an assumption.
Yes, exactly.
And that's something I think that needs more awareness in technical teams. That technical teams often think that the biggest unknown or the biggest challenge is, can we actually build it? But that's often not the biggest challenge. Like most things these days can be built. Given enough time and resources, you can build something. And by the way, if feasibility is a challenge, as you said, like, in order to do this, they need the equivalent of a self-driving car. Well, actually, then you need to test if you can build it, right?
Yeah.
All right. And so then, okay, I've cycled through a bunch of potential solutions and I landed on one. Then I'm done. I can roll it out, or
yes, you cycle through solutions. You validated the highest risks and the main assumptions, and then you have a quite high likelihood that these solutions will actually solve one of the most important problems of our target customer. That definitely will contribute to our business strategy or the business goal. And then you need to make the plan. So then you go to the next phase, and which is making a plan, assembling a team to start building a product. And then it's also not I'm not setting the waterfall approach, but also do it iteratively. Try to deploy as fast as possible. Keep thinking about assumption, about risks. Try to have it in the hands of the customers as soon as possible, that they can play with it, give feedback. And then you need to set up the whole system of gathering feedback. That's also a tip that I would give. Always keep talking to the customer. It's not only in the early stage, but always keep talking to the customer. So you can lower the frequency, but just make 1 or 2 hours a week and talk to some customer. And I think that's really important.
And this whole process from aligning with business strategy to validating a hypothesis, right? There's 7 steps or something like that. How long does it take? Like, is it something you can do in a week, a month, a quarter, a year? How much time does a company need, like a large organization, to do this for a big important data initiative?
Yeah, so the 2 most time-consuming parts are determining the real problem and determine the available options, because then you will need to talk to several people. And then what I experience as the main challenge is just getting time in the agenda of different people, because people are typically busy. So, and you need to plan interviews. Finding the time, so the throughput time can be several weeks, but going through these phases, if you did the preparation, for example, upfront, so if I already did the problem discovery, so interviewing and trying to figure out what's the real problem, if you made journey maps before, if you really understand what are the available options for the customer to reach the goal, and if you have all that available, then you can go through the workshop until the validation part in like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And then setting up the experiment again takes some time.
Yeah. Okay. So you need a couple of weeks to prep an interview and just make room available in agenda. Then you need some workshops to get to get to some potential solutions, and then you need to run your hypothesis testing, which takes another couple of weeks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess end to end, if I sum it up, best case, you do need a quarter, right?
No, I think you can. Yeah, I think you can.
Quicker.
Yes. I think yes. It also depends on the environment. But yeah.
But that's my experience as well. Given that it's a high enough priority, you will be able to free up the agendas of stakeholders, and you will be able to do it fast enough. But then if some stakeholders take 3 weeks to get something in their agenda, well, yeah, then you're delayed, right? Mm-hmm. That actually brings me to the more practical side. So if people watching the episode go like, yeah, that's something as a data leader, I want to be a bit more structured about which use case I tackle, especially the big bets. I want to make sure I do the right thing and not just start building and then realizing it's not needed. How do I do this in practice? What kind of team do I need to run a process like this?
Yes. So if you want to follow a structured process like this, you can consult the external people that have experience in this, that know how to run these kind of processes and frameworks and apply it on your specific scenario. But don't overly rely on the externals, because you definitely also need internal people with the knowledge about the real problems, because the externals will never understand the real problems, or they will start to understand if they go to a lot of interviews. But you definitely need people from your data team with technical knowledge, what's possible, what not. You need people from the business side, the team that you're trying to help. They need to be also within your team, or several people need to be within your team to really ensure that you understand the problem, because they have the problem knowledge. Yeah. And then external people are really handy for these kind of frameworks and ensuring that there is structure, that you have a neutral person viewing at what is being done.
And you talked a lot about, well, we took as example the marketing team, and we need to find a solution for them. Is it also important to create executive buy-in on the leadership level? And how do you typically tackle that?
Yes, that's also very important. The more buy-in you get, the easier it will go, the more easy you will find time. And we can go back to making it quantifiable. If you can make it quantifiable, I strongly recommend to search for problems that are quantifiable. That's what we define as good problems. Then you can clearly state, look, this is the problem. So many people lose so many time because of this problem. You can quantify it. So per month, so much money is lost. Yeah. And then you can start thinking about solutions, and you can start calculating the ROI, because you can also make an estimate for the solution. It will take X amount of people to work on it for that period of time. And then you can start estimating. And then if you have a nice business case, which is the goal here, to have a nice business case, then it's easy to sell.
But so you should avoid, the flip side of that is you should avoid use cases where you say, well, if we do this, we'll give a better customer experience, and that's why we're going to increase customer retention, and they're not going to leave us because how we treat them is better. Like if you just link it to better customer experience, but you can't quantify it or make it really hard numbers, you say don't use this method, because it's hard to see if you
it just becomes more difficult, because it can be the case, and some things are obvious to increase the customer experience, for example, and then you should do it. But it typically makes things always harder if you can measure it. So that's a general thing. Every initiative that you do upfront, before you start, try to define how you will measure it. And then the second part, what I think most people don't do, is set a target, like measure it, and having a target upfront. Because what typically happens is you start an initiative, and you might, that's I think already very good if you have some metrics, and then you do the initiative, and then you start measuring, and then afterwards everybody is around the table and looking, but actually you can interpret it like this, and it might still be good, so still, let's continue, and it's good. So to prevent that, you should upfront, before you start the initiative, really think, how do we define success? What is success for us?
Yeah.
Try to have it measurable. It just simplifies a lot of things, but it's not an easy exercise. That's the other part of it. It's not an easy exercise.
Well, and then make it measurable and make sure that you tackle big enough problems, right? When you said that in the beginning already, make sure you solve real headaches and not just annoyances. There's this great quote I heard, like if you want to know if you're successful with such a project and you need a data scientist and a microscope to validate you're successful, you're probably not successful. It needs to be super obvious, like this is the money we're saving, this is the extra money we're getting in, this is the new customers that signed up in the experiment, this is the uplift we're getting, right? Yeah. Okay. I like to wrap up with a question I ask all the guests. What is something that you know now about data that you didn't know when you started in this space?
Oh, very good question. It's maybe an obvious one, but data is really everywhere, and you should not just simply collect it, but really think about it. And it's also just what we just said. Think about what you want to measure, and have upfront targets of it, and then just only measure that. Only measure, spend time on what's needed. Only spend time on what's relevant. Capture the data that's relevant. Do the right things with that data.
Don't be a data hoarder.
Yes.
All right. With that, Frederik, I'd like to thank you for coming on the podcast. I wish you best of luck with deploying the framework at clients, and I'm curious to see what comes out.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.